Okay, today I'm going to be explaining what I would do in the first 3 lessons for a beginner violinist. First, at the very first lesson, we would just focus on the violin. We would not bring out the bow. And I would first put a few tapes on their instrument. So first I would put this little high dot, which I already put on, and that's right on the middle harmonic. So I would find that, put it on, and then check it to make sure it's right. And then I'm going to put on the second and the third finger tapes. So I'm going to find that. And then I'm going to take a little piece of tape and I'm going to slide it up to where my second finger was. And my tapes are a little bit long, but that's so it can go around the whole thing. And now that I know it's in the right spot, I'll wrap the extra tape around. And now I'll do the same thing with my third finger. So I need one right there. So I'm going to take another piece of tape and I'm going to slide it up the fingerboard, because that's the easiest way I feel like to do it, is to slide it up instead of trying to get it through. Okay, now I'm going to check it. And when I feel like it's in a good spot, I am going to put it on. Okay, when you finish putting on all the tapes, it should look like this. You should have your high dot, your second finger, and your third finger. Now, we can put the instrument away for a little bit, and we're going to focus on what our hand is going to be doing. So, with your student, you're going to take a pen. You can make a different color if you want. And first, you're going to put on something called the Magic X, right here where your first finger connects to your hand. So I'm just going to put a little X, and mine's not going to look great because this is my left hand and I am a lefty. Okay, so now it should look like that. And then on your thumb, you're going to put a little smiley face. And again, I am a lefty. Okay, so now, at this point, you should have your tapes all ready to go, your smiley thumb, and your Magic X. Now with my student, still without their instrument, I would teach them how to stand properly when they're trying to play. I would make sure to always start my players standing, because it's easier to go from standing playing to sitting playing than sitting playing to standing playing. So it's a little bit hard to see in here, but I would tell them to stand with their feet shoulder width apart, out in front of them, and then I would have them bend their knees so that they know what that would feel like. And so then I would have them lock their knees so they know what that feel like. And then I would tell them that they have to find somewhere kind of in the middle. You want to make sure that your knees are still bending. And then I would tell them to sway like a tree in the breeze, where your body's kind of the trunk and your feet are the roots in the ground, to help them remember to stay grounded when they're playing. Their feet should stay in the same spot. And while they're doing this, I'm sort of looking to see if their knees are locked, if they're swaying good, if their feet are spaced correctly, and things like that. Then I would show them how to hold their violin in rest position. Still just the violin, no bow yet. So it's kind of hard to do it myself. But I would have them put their right hand up in the air, and then I would put their violin right here, and then I would tell them to give their violin a hug. And now, with everything combined, I would have them stand there, knees a little bit bent, and just sway with their violin. And then once I feel like their stance is pretty good, then we would move on to using our Magic X. So I would tell them that their Magic X is magnetic to the fingerboard right here, and I would just have them slide up and down the fingerboard. And this is just for the first time, and we do this again later once they're like in position, but this is just so that they can get started. I would be looking to make sure that their wrist stays straight like this instead of floppy like this. And I would make sure that their smiley thumb is looking over. And then once I feel like we're ready, I would tell them to plop their fingers on the high dot, hold their violin, hold it up into the air like the Statue of Liberty, turn it, take this part, land it on their shoulder, and I would make sure that their heads are still facing straight, and then I would have them put their head tilt their head a little bit to go onto the chin rest, but only a little bit. And when we're doing this, I would make sure that they're not scrunched up like this, that they're not fully just holding it with just their chin. I would make sure that they're in like a diagonal kind of position, not like this and not like this. And I would make sure that they're still standing up straight. And then once you're here, then we would do the same thing again with the magic X, where this hand is sort of just free. We would slide up and down and up and down, up and down, and then we would slide up, and then we would tap on the high dot, and we'd slide down, and slide up and down, and I'm still making sure that they don't have a loose and floppy wrist, but they have a straight wrist, where your hand, your wrist, your fingers, and your arm are all moving together. And then when they're up on the high dot, I would tell them that their fingers should look like little rainbows. And they should always be bent, and they should not be floppy. They should always be bent. And while they're on the high dot, their thumb should be looking at their fingers. And for a closer angle of this, sliding up and down, tapping on the high dot, making sure that our fingers stay curved like a rainbow, and they're not flat like this, but they're curved like this, and that our thumb is looking at our fingers. And for me, I feel like this would be a good spot to stop for your first lesson. You kept it pretty simple. You're not overwhelming them with too much information. You want to make sure during your first couple lessons not to use super complex musical language that they won't know yet and make there become like a disconnect between teacher and student. You want to make sure that you're using language that they know, like floppy wrist or stiff wrist, things like that. You want to make sure that your finger tapes are still on by the end of the lesson. They're good to set up during the first lesson, especially because you need the high dot, but it's good to just get the 2 and the 3 done. And this is where I would stop for my first lesson. So now it would be my second lesson with this student. Their violin should still have the 2nd and 3rd tapes and the high dot tapes. When my student got there, I would redraw the magic X and the smiley face on their thumb. Now I would spend the first couple minutes of my lesson reminding them of what we did in the first lesson, because it might be a while between you see them and you don't know how much they could practice or how much they could remember. It's just good to go over it again. So first I would remind them to stand with their feet shoulder width apart. Make sure to bend your knees a little bit. Sway like a tree. Then I would have them raise their right hand and hug their violin again. And then when we're ready, I would have them land on the high dot, go to a Statue of Liberty, twist, land it, and put your head down. And then with our magic X, we would slide again, and I would make sure that their wrist is still straight, and they remember that it should be straight, and that their thumb is watching. And then we can tap on the high dot a little bit. If we wanted to start rhythm with them, we could tap out a rhythm, like, we can do that if we want, or we don't have to. This is just a good way to remind them of what we had done in the previous lesson. And then once I feel like they've remembered what we've done, it's time to move on to some new stuff. So right now we'd be in playing position after doing the Statue of Liberty, and I would show them where to do pizzicato with. I would show them, you don't do it here, and I would show, doesn't sound good, and you don't do it here, but I would explain that you hook your thumb under the fingerboard and reach over. And this is the first sound that they're ever going to make with their violin. So for a little bit, I might just let them, pluck around, do what they want to do. And then eventually I would do, I do, we do, and then they do for the first 2 pieces that they're going to play. The first one would be A, E, A. And so it would go like this. I would say, watch me do it, and then you'll do it. Or watch me do it, and then we'll do it together, and then you'll do it on your own. So it would go. I would show them and go, A, E, A, stomp. A, E, A, stomp. A, E, E, A, stomp. And then together, we would do it together. And then I would have them do it by themselves. And the whole time that they're doing this, I would be watching their posture, how they're standing upright with the violin, if the violin is in the right angle, if it's not like here, it's not here, it's not here. I would be watching their knees, make sure that they're not bent. I would be watching their feet, make sure that they're a good width apart. And I would just be making sure that their foundation for adding more things is there. And then we would also do the same I do, we do, they do for the ant song. So I would go first, and I would do the ant song, and then they would go, and they would do the ant song. I would go, each and every ant, digging in the dirt, deep within the ground. And this song is a really good way to just have them try out all their strings, and just go through them up to down, and they can correlate each with E and all the letters so that they can figure out like E's up here, and then A, and then D, and then G. If you wanted to get more advanced, you could also do fingers with this one for each and every ant. But if with a really, really young beginner, I probably would not do that. And you could also do the AEA song with other strings as well, but I like that ants uses all 4 strings in one piece. And again, I would be watching for their posture and their wrists and their shoulders and all of the work with the high dot and things. I'll be making sure that they are standing with a good foundation for the next lesson when we move on. Now we would be at our 3rd lesson, and this is when we would start to use the bow. I would start my lesson without the instrument and just the bow. I would make my student a pinky house. This one is pre-made, and that is just where their pinky would go. And so then I would show them the pinky house, and I would show them and tell them that we're going to use the bow today. But then before we did that, I would put the bow down and work on their bow hold with them before we even used the bow. I would do the little bunny song where you say, here's the little bunny, hop, hop. Here's the bunny's teeth, chomp, chomp. See the bunny's ears, wiggle, wiggle. And then see the bunny go, hippity, hippity, hop. And so this song is really good for little kids, and it ends up with a pretty accurate, close to what you want for their bow hold. And then when they're ready, we might do that a couple times. And then when they're ready, when they first do their bow hold, I would have their bow like this, not like this. Because when you're playing, it's more accurate to this and not this. So I would have them do the bunny thing, and then I would have them open. I would put their thumb in. And then I would say, flop the bunny's ears down. And I would have the one bunny ear, go in little pinky house. And then that's how they would set up their bow for the first time. And we might do this a couple times. You see the bunny, flop, and then open, under, over, and here. And I'll be making sure that when their finger is in the pinky house, it's straight, that these fingers are over all the way, not like up like this, over all the way, like the bunny's ears. And then next, on my student's bow, I would take another little piece of tape, and I would mark the halfway point on their bow. And this is just good to know, for them to know. That's about halfway. And then to get them to work on bow hold and bow weight, there's a lot of little games that you can play with them. The one that I like a lot that we do in class is we go panda. And when you do pan, it kind of goes down, and then you push it back up with your pinky. I like this one because without the student having to know it necessarily, it works on where the weight is in the bow, and like prognating. So you would go pan, and when you're like this, most of the weight is in the lower with your pinky and maybe your 2 middle fingers, and then you go da, and then the weight goes back to your pointer finger. So you go pan, da, pan, da. And your student doesn't necessarily have to know that, but it's good to watch them sort of work that out. And then to work on motion with the bow, you could say it goes round and round like a big yellow sun. And you can go down and up like a rocket ship, up like a rocket ship. And there's lots of little things like that that you could do over and over again. So there's pan, da, and there's around like a sun, then it's up like a rocket ship, down to the ground. Up, down. Now, for the first time with their bow, it might be a little bit tricky for them to get back to rest position that they know while still holding onto their bow because they've never done that before. So I would sort of help them again, put your arm, I would have them hold the bow, put their arm up, and then I would have them hug their bow. And I would sort of just explain that your bow can sort of just be down for now. And then we would do the same thing with the Statue of Liberty. Put it down, tilt your head. And then I would have them hold their bow like this. Maybe do another panda, panda. And then I would have them put it right on the string. And like the pizzicato, this is the first time that they're making a new kind of sound on the instrument. So I might just have them try it and make whatever noise they want to make at first, just so that they can get a feeling of what it's like. Then I could tell them, put it where the middle point is, and I can explain that this is like a highway and you want to be on the middle lane. So you want to be on the tape on the middle lane. And obviously at first I can help them with this, and then we would work on some songs. So we would do the same songs from the pizzicato so they know them again, and we would try it with the bow. And they can use a lot of bow, little bow. Right now it's more about figuring out how to pull the bow and how to make sound with the bow. So I would have them do A, E, A again with the stomps and the ants again. And I would have them try it with the bow. And if I was noticing that they were sort of having trouble pulling or pushing the bow, I could hold the bow and sort of help them with it. But I do think for the most part, if it was my students' first time ever using the bow, I would try to let them have as much fun with it as possible and sort of see how they would want to do it. Just because it's a really fun thing to try for the first time, to like make a lot of noise. So those are the first songs that I would do with the bow. And now, while they're doing their songs, I would be watching to make sure, of course, same as always, their posture is right, their knees are bent a little bit, their legs are far apart, they're swaying like a tree, their bow, their left hand is where we need it to be, and that's all stuff that we've done in the first two lessons. So right now I'm going to talk about how I would make sure that their bow is doing the right thing. I would watch to make sure that their bow hand is still slightly tilted, and that it's not like this, or it's not like all the way around. I would make sure that their thumb is in the middle, not under. I would watch to make sure that they're in the pinky house. And then when they're actually using the bow, I would explain to them that their arm is like a gate that should open and close, and open and close. And so then when they're doing their songs, I would make sure that it's opening and closing, and not going back and forth and back and forth. I would watch to make sure it's opening and closing. And that would be my first 3 lessons for a new beginner violin student.